Good afternoon from New York. I'm Wendell Edgecombe, and I'll be your host this afternoon. And thanks to you, wherever you are, whether you're in New York City or the Bahama Islands or in England or anywhere in the world, because we are coming to you from New York and we are being televised to the world. Before we get into the meat of our program this afternoon, I would like to say it in New York City, for those people who are watching, it is a beautiful day in New York City, beautiful spring day. And we who were bombarded by the cold weather, we celebrate the spring in New York City. As the people in the Bahamas, they always have spring, so they don't they don't have that transition from a cold weather to beautiful sunshine, warm weather, blossoming flowers, and the streets are packed. People are enjoying the weather in New York City. But before, I would like to say something to people who are watching us from the Bahamas, and congratulations. Yesterday, the Bahamas won first place in the Penn Games that were held in Philadelphia yesterday, and they beat New York. and that's a great prize for the Bahamas. In the 400 men relay event. Now, this afternoon we have a wonderful and I hope in a very informative and inspiring program for you. The topic that we would like to discuss is a worldwide topic. It is about global warming and also about what people are doing in order to protect the environment and to save it for our children and our children's children. And joining me this afternoon is one of my brothers from the Bahama Islands, Joe Darville, who is an activist in the Bahamian community in regard to saving the environment. Let me say that I don't know in the Bahamas, there was Earth Day, and here in New York, on the 22nd of April, and it was a day to behold. There were exhibitions of ways to save the environment at Union Square, Grand Central Station, and all over New York City. And it was a very inspiring and very eventful day on the 22nd of April, which was the 42nd anniversary, I think, of Earth Day. And so, welcome, Mr. Darville, to our program this afternoon. Would you like to say welcome to our audience here?
Oh, absolutely, and a warm and balmy day from the archipelagic nation of the Bahamas. Absolutely the most beautiful spot on God's earth. And welcome, 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 and greetings to everyone in New York and all around the world where this program is being seen or heard. It is such a great pleasure for Wendell and Beryl to invite me to be on this show and to say and share things that are happening here in the Bahamas.
Very, very, very good. Now, just in case that many of our audience or those who are watching our program, if they do not know the the kind of relationship that exists between the United States and the Bahamas and the archipelago of the Bahamas, which are composed of many islands, 17 major islands, in fact, is that the Bahama Islands has historically, geographically, and socially are very close to the United States of America. And we from them Bahamians, this is the name of this program, which is the media arm of the Bahamian American Cultural Society, for the past 3 years, we have been emphasizing that close relationship that exists between the two countries. But to the point here is that Manhattan is an island, and the islands in the Bahamas. And as far as being surrounded by water, we have similar experience in terms of how we relate to the ocean. And the case in point is that the most recent storm that descended upon us in New York was Sandy. We are still suffering from the effects of that major storm that also infected a lot of the eastern seaboard. And I'm not so sure, but it did affect the Bahamas. Did it affect the Bahamas, Joe?
Only slightly. Just a few years ago, of course, we had some extremely devastating hurricanes passing through the Bahamas, just one after the other over a 2-year period.
Right.
But with respect to that last one, the Sandy, it brought us a lot of wind and a little bit of rain, and it did do minimal destruction, but it was mainly to the plants and the trees, fruit trees, etc.
Yeah, well, it was very instructive to the environment in New York City. In fact, it breached the rivers, the river guards. For those who know about New York, I mean, we on the west side is the Hudson River, and the waves and the water came all the way to, I think, to 10th Avenue. And on the east side, the waves from the East River, water came all the way to First Avenue. And it affected even the hospitals. I know New York University emergency room was so affected that, in fact, it just got back into operation about a week ago, or a few days ago. The emergency room was knocked out of commission by, I guess, the plumbing and many of the electrical equipment. So we were affected by that storm. But, and I say that to say that also that there is a plan in Manhattan now to come up with a mechanism by which we can avoid that from happening if it happens, if we are affected by such a weather condition in the future. Now, the Bahamas as an island, let me ask you, what are the dangers and what are tell us about what are the dangers in the Bahamas? How is the environment being affected by, fossil fuel or Mr. Darville?
Yeah, well, when it comes to just a very brief thing on the situation with tropical storms, hurricanes, whether minimal or major, there is very little we can do because our islands are all flat and, of course, they are vulnerable to flooding, etc. And so we just have to be alerted and take protection, basically human protection, in order not to be. We're very fortunate in the Bahamas in that regard that in spite of very high intense storms, we have hardly any loss of life in the Bahamas, and that's because we have been traditionally very much aware of the storms and we know how to take protection. Now, when it comes to the actual pollution in the Bahamas, we do have our share of pollution, and that is the high risk of oil pollution. We have a major oil transshipment terminal right here in Grand Bahama where I reside, and very often there is oil spillage there, either from ships that are anchored nearby waiting to offload their fuel, their cargo, or simply in spillage that may be caused by transferring oil into the jetties and then onto the massive and many tanks, oil tanks onshore. Of course, we have a colossal situation with respect to pollution in Nassau. Our electricity corporation, their generation plant is right on Clifton Heritage, near Clifton Heritage site, and that is traditionally continuously polluting the not only the air, but also because of the low grade of fuel which is used, but also the groundwater, the ground table is saturated with oil, traditionally long-term coming from that particular company. And as a result, it's now seeping into the ocean on the southwestern tip of the island, and actually it sort of floats underwater, and also it's sinking to the bottom, and many of the reefs, the coral reefs in that area are being progressively destroyed due to pollution. I know when I was a small boy or even a young man living in Nassau, I used to dive up Clifton Pier into that deep water to go spear fishing and just simply to enjoy the tremendously beautiful water on that side of the island.
Now,
Recently,
not cutting you off, there is a distillery, oil distillery, or petroleum near the island of Nassau?
Yeah, there's a number of companies that inhabit that area. You have the Clifton power plant there. You have a brewery. You have a cement factory, and also it's the area, the bunkering area, where most of the major oil companies come to offload their fuel for the gas stations in Nassau. So that's in fact, that's where we actually began that's what's in the nascence of our organization, Save the Bays. Because we became very much concerned about the incredible pollution in that area, and therefore we took it upon ourselves to formalize an organization called Save the Bays to deal with that area, Clifton area, with all the pollution there, oil pollution, as well as Jaws Beach, which due to a particular illegal activity that was taking place in that area, the beaches there were being starved of sand, and that was the only public beach left in that section of New Providence for Bahamians to go and enjoy themselves.
Right.
And so that was the formulation, was a basic formulation of Save Clifton Bay. But when we formed that organization, and all of the other places which were threatened, like Bimini, Abaco, even here in Grand Bahama, in Long Island, due to unregulated development or developers who come in, and they come in and they have no concern about our particular environment.
Joe, not to interrupt you a bit, but you have named so many different islands. You talk about Grand Bahama and New Providence and Bimini and so forth. For those people who do not know, and there are some I have experienced, who do not know what the Bahamas looks like as a group of islands. Many of them only know about Nassau, or at least two, Grand Bahama. And this is, put your camera, I want you to look at this map and see this is the Bahamas from north to south. When he talks about Grand Bahama, this is Grand Bahama up here. And now when Mr. Darville is talking about New Providence and Nassau, it is right here, if you can see. So, but all of these are islands of the Bahamas, okay? Bimini is up here, and he has just mentioned that, and I'm sure he will. This is Abaco here. He will mention this shortly. I'm sure. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know I always say that Dem Bahamians is also informative of who we are and where we are and what we are about to the worldwide audience. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted that to be said, okay?
No, I think that is important to put the whole archipelagic nation of the Bahamas in perspective, you know, lying very close, stretching from southern tip of Florida all the way down to Cuba.
Yes.
And that's a vast expanse of islands and keys. You know, we have what they call 700 islands and keys, but it's probably up in the thousands if you count the smaller ones. And the problem is that there is no what we may call coastal areas left in the North America area for development. And so they see developers come and they see all of this land and sea and beautiful beaches, etc., in the Bahamas, and they come and they want to put these mega developments here. And as a result of it, the residual of it is that they do a tremendous amount of destruction to the ecosystem, to the environment. Like, just let me quickly give you a little image about Bimini, which you hardly ever see on the map. It is one of the smallest islands in the Bahamas, and it is so renowned for its history. Hemingway lived there, he wrote his novels there, etc. And now Ghent and Company has come in there, and they have basically destroyed that environment. They have dug up the bays where we had some 15 different species of fish that come to mate and to spawn, to have their young, and for the young to grow to juvenile size in order to migrate back into the ocean. So that's a whole orchestra of mangroves and bays in that area. And of course, when they came in, to them, they didn't know what they were all about. So they said the mangroves served no purpose. So they came in and absolutely dilapidated, destroyed 163 acres of prime mangroves. And there was that one that is almost extinct in the world called the small-toothed sawfish. Okay, and that had its habitat right there in a place called Pigeon Point, right, in the Bay. And that's completely wiped out that area. We had lemon sharks that came up in there, and now a young woman, a scientist, spent 4 years studying the results of the development there and found out that only 26% of the lemon sharks that came there to have their young, and then they always come back, the young ones always come back there also to have their young, and that's down to 26%. So that type of destruction, which is done by mega developments, like what is happening on Bimini, is absolutely regrettable. I call them actually environmental pirates, because they come here, they're not investors, they come here to make a whole lot of money fast, and we have a major storm, and that whole development is going to go out in the ocean. Right now they're building, so I don't know if anyone in your audience have seen or heard about that incredible, we call Bimini Blue. There's no ocean in the world like it. And all right off the western side of northern Bimini, they have this beautiful area where there are some 16 prime dive sites, internationally famous. This company now is building a dock to go out 1,000 feet into the water, intersection with those coral reefs and the coral beds and the seabed. And then at the end of it, they're going to build a 4.5-acre island, which is more than 4 times the size of a football field. And you know, that's a type of destruction that we in this country is allowing these people to come in just because they got a whole lot of money. And of course we need jobs, but they, you know, are we sacrificing our inheritance, our heritage, this sacred, beautiful land that's given to us simply for some fast dollars to come into the country? I say no, no, no. So this is what actually we have the.
Joe, let me interrupt a bit. I see that you are very passionate and you are really committed to saving the environment in the Bahamas, and that's very good. Could you just pinpoint to me when you say, when talking about Bimini, you mentioned the bay. You mentioned that several times. Just specifically, what is the importance of bays
Okay, the importance of bays.
and I'm sure it's not only in Bimini, but in the rest of the islands there are bay areas. What are the importance of bays in terms of the ecology, and how does the bay fit into the survival and the quality of life of the citizens of the Bahamas? Could you?
Excellent question, Wendell. And I would appreciate if you just call me Joseph instead of Mr. Darville. Joseph, like I call you Wendell.
Okay.
Wendell, almost every one of our islands are situated in such a way, and it's incredible, and it's not by accident the way they were formed, and it's almost like, intelligence. God created them that way, because they are all endowed with what we call bays. This is an area of shallow water on the banks, and they're mainly surrounded by mangroves. And in those areas, the fish come to spawn, to have their young, and for the young to grow. And they feed the rest of the ocean. They go back out in the ocean. If you didn't have those bays like in Bimini, you would not have the marlins and the sharks and the grunts and the snappers and all of the fish that are so much plentiful in and around Bimini right now. You would not have them if these bays are compromised, if they're destroyed. And so there are shallow areas ranging from 1 foot of water up to about 9 feet. They're basically with scattered mangroves in them, where fish, mangroves are these things that grow naturally in salt water and brackish water. So they have almost like prongs, like fingers going down into the mud, into the sand, and little fish find shelter up in there. Shrimp, lobster, conch, all of these particular species, marine species, find their refuge in that area. And if you destroy that, you're destroying the food that's going to feed the people who live on those islands, because they move from there when they were juvenile, and then they have a bigger chance of not being devoured by the big predators. And so then they move out into the ocean, and then they could grow to mature size for us to harvest, whether it's a lobster, the conch, the snapper, the jack, and for the beauty and the grace, the sharks finally are all protected in the Bahamas, which is excellent. But it's a shame that we cut down the population of lemon sharks to 26% of what they were before Genting Canal Resorts World Bimini began to destroy the habitat of these particular creatures. So they are essential for the food for these islands. If we were to be cut off from the United States, you talked about our closeness to the United States. We depend upon the United States for about 90% of our food. If we were to have some catastrophe in these islands, and we to be separated for a long time or permanently from the United States, if we don't have the ocean to fall back on to feed our people and the land, we would starve. And the land is not extremely fertile, because it's mainly a rocky area and what we call coral reef development, etc. But I mean, we could still gain a lot from the land itself. But the fact is that we depend upon the ocean, and we cannot allow that beautiful. I mean, from what would happen from space? What did the astronauts say when they looked down upon Mother Earth? You know what they said? When they passed on the Bahamas, they said it was the most beautiful spot on Mother Earth, and they called it the gem of Mother Earth. And we want to keep it that way for future generations. My grandchildren, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, they want to have the same enjoyment of this beautiful environment that we enjoy today. But if we allow mega developments to come in here, and unregulated development, the destruction of our environment, and that is exactly what is happening. We got this big, huge thing called Machiavellian. It's a dredging machine that has come into Bimini now, and they're supposed to scoop up 220,000 megatons of the seabed, including the coral reefs and everything, to dump into that area which they're going to build the island. Is that sustainable development? That is insane for anything like that. So you see why I'm passionate about this. I am 72 years old, and I feel great. I'm very healthy and so forth, but I could be gone tomorrow. But I want to know that these beautiful islands are going to be here in their pristine beauty as they are now, and we're not going to let irresponsible people come in, and we love investment. Come in, but have respect for our people, have respect for the environment.
I hear what you're saying, and it's a very good mission, and I applaud you for that mission and that goal of yours. And just personally, I have the same. I'm of similar mind, and I have similar goals. But what do you say to the developers? Because this is, as I see it, this is the controversy, and this is the debate between developers or the economists and the ecologists and the environmentalists. To the best of my knowledge, the economists would say that there have been problems and throughout the world and in our own country that have come up, but the economic developments and the production of food has always overcome the deficits of what the environmentalists say that they have they've lost, that they have been compensating rewards on the other end too, in the production of food that you mentioned. Granted that the mangroves and the bays have been not eliminated, but downsized because of development, but food is still plentiful, or the populations are still being fed, and even not only being fed, but being fed probably even better than in the past. How do you answer that as an ecologist?
Well, like myself and many of us who are in this battle and fight together, we have a tremendous. Well, one second. Hello? Okay. All right. Okay. All right then. Wendell, sorry for the interruption.
Yes.
One thing that with every one of the people in our organization, we are very, very conscious of the need for development. We're talking about sustainable development. We're talking about development that has a high level of regard for our ecosystem. And there are places in the Bahamas, particularly in the there's another chain of islands, of course, the Exuma Keys, etc., where this is being done. But what happens, and we have a dray load of these developers who come in, and they come in with these magnificent plans, and they start them, and they stop them, and then they go and they leave the environment absolutely devastated. And the reason for that is that in two important things that we need to know about, or your audience need to know, and that is that the Bahamas yet does not have an Environment Protection Act. So these people could come in here, the oil companies can come in here, they can pollute our waters, they can pollute our oil, our land, they can pollute the air, and there is no compensation to the people for the destruction of our natural environment. We are very conscious of the fact that people have to live. We have 300, not even 400,000 people in the Bahamas. We get almost 7 million tourists a year in the Bahamas. We don't need any magnificent, huge development that's going to destroy the environment. We don't need to have any.
Are they being overdeveloped, you would say, or what? Or are they being overdeveloped?
Yeah, they come in with these, like, for example, Bimini is a prime example. And if you want to know what is happening there, tell your audience to go on Protect Clifton or go and SaveTheBays.bs and see all of the destruction that has taken place on that little island and how the people are not aware of anything. The government doesn't tell them what's going on. Even the local government head there doesn't know what's going on. They bring in this huge dredging machine from Italy, apparently called Machiavellian. I call it colossal the Machiavellian destroyer, and it's coming there to root up the seabed, etc. The people know nothing. They don't even talk to the people. That is the problem that we have. A lack of freedom of information. We can't get to. We don't know anything until it starts to happen or until it's halfway done. Right now, we have three legal things going on in the courts at the present time. One related to the improper housing of dolphins in Nassau and one of the Keys. The second one is the Clifton Bay thing. The third one is Bimini. And we're about to launch one in Abaco, where the developers feel that they got a carte blanche to begin destruction of an environment where people used to go right off the road, fish for bonefish, fish for snapper, lobster used to come right up in that area to spawn, and the guy just came in willy-nilly and put his tractor there and destroyed 10 acres of prime mangroves and spawning ground for fish without even a permit. If I were to do that, or you were to do that in our islands, we would be in jail the next day. But because, big money can speak, they come in, and it's not for the benefit of the people, not at all. Like Bimini, they touted as, employing so many people, etc. That isn't the point. That is not the point. It's only after the Save the Bays made so much noise that they decided, well, they better, hire a few local Biminites. But, they brought in the workers from elsewhere. They built that, all of those houses have been built by people from the Dominican Republic and Mexicans.
So
they're not even hiring Bahamians.
Joe, not to interrupt you, so your message is clear to both sides. The message is clear is that the developers need to be more conscious of the people of the country in which they are developing, and to respect the environment. But also your message is local too, is that developers just can't come into the Bahamas and willy-nilly build factories. Is that they are regulated. I mean, they have to come in at the invitation of a certain governmental structure, and then they need to be monitored. So your fight and your mission for the environment is both to the developers and to a message to the government to devise certain guidelines then for their operation in that country. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that's an excellent summary, Wendell, and that's what we've been trying to educate our own government to do. Respect the people, get their opinion, meet with them. In fact, it's all in development plans in the Bahamas, but of course, and they are passed by the government, by governmental officials, parliamentarians, but they don't even follow the law. And so we have to bring them to court to tell them, hey, you've established these laws, you're supposed to follow these. We need to see an EIA, Environmental Protection Impact Study, before even permission is given for them to come in to start anything. They need to have a permit for every single project that they're doing. They need to have one for building. They need to have one for excavation. They need the one for removal of sands. These are not done. They come in, of course they come in invitation to government. That is a given. But then that isn't all. There are the people. The people are important, and you have to consult them. You cannot just come and plunk something down in their backyard and expect them to like it. 100% of almost 100% of the Biminites were totally opposed to what is going on there now. But were they consulted? No, they weren't consulted. And the reason being that there's no Environmental Protection Act, there is no Freedom of Information Act, so we cannot even garner any information on these developments until them already started to happen. You can't, they come here, they can't do that in the United States. I mean, even if you want to put up a flag in front of your yard, you want to build a wall, put up a fence, you have to go through so many different channels from the local to the state, et cetera, to do that. They come here and they say, hey, man, this is carte blanche. I can do anything I like. And that's something we're trying to teach our people, to understand that they are no longer slaves on the plantation. They are free people in this country. They have a right to know. They have a right to know what is happening. Even right now, we have what we call advisors in here from New Zealand who are advising us on the implementation of VAT, value-added tax. And two of the things that they said right up front is that no government can institute VAT without Freedom of Information Act, or the way you go in to report all the funds, etc. But we in this country, that can go by the wayside. And that's the unfortunate thing, Wendell, that our people have been acceptable to this way of government doing things on their behalf for far too long. We are not going to allow it anymore. We're the fastest growing environmental group in the country. I mean, we only started like over a year ago, just March we celebrated, last month we celebrated the first year. And already, I mean, we're just phenomenally recognized across the country, even across the world now, in the work that we're doing, because there has been no other environmental protection group in the country to call the government on things that they're doing without informing the people. We're not even talking about getting permission. Of course, it's something reprehensible. We will object, but we don't even have the situation where we can object. And that is not the way we should operate in an enlightened.
Granted, Joe. Well, very well put, and you are providing for us, giving us a good education on what's going on in our neighboring countries, in my country also, the Bahamas. But let me just give you, if this is any consolation, is that granted that probably the Bahamas does not have as many guidelines and laws to protect the governmental, the Bahamian environment as the United States do, I would like to tell you is that there is a debate in this country also. I mean, I'm sure you read the media, newspapers, and the social media or electronic media, and to see that there is a strong debate going on in this country and in other countries. I mean, the International Panel for Climate Changes, all of that. I mean, that has those recommendations and has largely not has gone through the various channels that it should go through in the United States. It's being a lot of it is being blocked. The international recommendations being blocked by the United States. We have in this country a terrible time of education, and it's not only educating and advocating towards the government on these issues, but when you mention education, there's another kind of education too, is educating the people. As you very well put, educating them to their rights and to their freedom in a democratic country, but also educating them to be aware of the dangers to their environment. And I want to just change it a little bit here and ask you, what kind of education are you involved in educating the masses of people, the people who use the bay, the people?
I was only about 2 months into the formation of this organization called Save the Bays, that I came to the realization that we were not going to get very far if we only dealt with the present level of mentality, what you may call matured mentality, quote unquote matured, in this country. And that we have to begin at the grassroots level, at children's level. And so quickly, I in addition to being a director of Save the Bays, I'm also waterkeeper for the Bahamas. You know, the Waterkeeper Alliance, actually, which has its headquarters in New York. I am designated now the waterkeeper for the Bahamas. And I will be attending in next month, the end of next month, a conference in Pittsburgh. But I say that to say that I realized very quickly, and I put in, we have a budget for education, and we have what we call the Youth Environmental Ambassadors. And we actually, since last year, we've been running a Saturday program, and we have over 2,400 young people already educated to every aspect of what it is about the environment, anything that affects the air, the ground, or the water, or the sea, the seabed, the corals, the invasive species, whether it's animals in the sea, destructive development, etc., unregulated development. We have been carrying this on. We have a radio program. In fact, I'll be on the radio program tonight from 5 to 6 on Love 97 FM, and you could get that on online as well. And in fact, I'm going to be talking about Freedom of Information Act tonight, and also the Clifton Heritage Sea Park. We have the Heritage Clifton Land Park now, but we're talking about developing the Sea Park, you know, which should be in conjunction with the land park. And we have school visits. Of course, we have absolutely an incredible, and in fact, as I said, if you go on the website or the Facebook of SaveTheBays.bs, you'll see the phenomenal work that we've done in just over a year in all these areas of education. So that is our effort, and we have some 12 partners in different islands, you know, where they have like the Bimini Blue Coalition, the Conservancy, and Earth Care, Re-Earth. All of these organizations are partnering with us in order to bring the awareness to our people about the necessity to save this country. And if we don't look at when we destroy the mangroves, we're putting the islands themselves at risk for flooding from hurricanes, etc. And we've already experienced that in some of the islands where the mangroves have been compromised. It is no, you know, Long Island, for example, when Diamond Crystal came there, and they completely redirected the water from all of that Bay Area and Deadman Ski. The mud level rose up to about 2.5 feet, where I used to go out and dive and dig fish, and the water caught me up to my breast level at high tide. Now it doesn't even catch me up to the knee. So they sucked out all of the water in that area to make salt. That's what I talk about destructive. You cannot find the bonefish, the grunts, the snappers in that area now at all. So that type of destruction we don't want. And where's Diamond Crystal now? It's gone, and the environment is devastated, dilapidated.
Let me ask you a question. You talk about the continental shelf is either receding or the ocean is encroaching on the land. What about that? Is there as far as in the islands, is there a natural erosion of the coastline? I've heard that, and I wanted to. You can confirm that. Is there a natural erosion? I mean, not necessarily based upon development, not from the developers, man-made, but is there a sort of natural erosion of the coastline? Is there?
Yeah, that is definitely obvious, and particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, during which, well, going back to 2004 and 2005 with the major hurricanes, that has become very noticeable, and that is one reason why we do not need to add to that erosion by devastation of the sea coast and the seabed and the beaches, etc. So yeah, that is a natural phenomenon. And I personally cannot tell whether or not it's a natural situation that is happening, or whether it's simply because we've had a number of major storms in the last 10 years or so. But the storms are becoming more frequent and more intense, and I think, of course, they say that is all due to global warming, etc.
So does that mean that there is a downsizing of the island?
No, I don't think it's noticeable. If you observe very carefully, like I do, for example, weathers on Long Island, Exuma, Nassau, etc., what is happening, it's almost imperceptible, but it's there. If you go back there and after 10 years, you can actually see but it's so minute. You expect that maybe if another hurricane comes along, it will probably, if it comes from a different direction, it will probably bring back the sand and replenish the areas. But I don't think it's anything that's significant enough that we need to be concerned about it right now.
But it's mild. It's real but mild. Okay. Now let me ask you. Now, as we know, the Bahamas is for its economy and for the development of its people educationally and socioeconomically is dependent upon the tourism. Could you relate what you were doing, ecology and saving the environment, to what impact that would have on the main source of the GMP of the Bahamas, tourism? Does that enter into some consideration in the mix?
Well, yes, because when we talk about unregulated development, and even in the areas where tourists are attracted the most, we're talking about the preservation of ecosystem that will continually bring tourists back to the islands. They want to come and see the islands as they naturally are. And so definitely the education, what we're carrying out right now, and also we have insertion into the College of the Bahamas as well, in terms of alerting them. We run programs, workshops for students from the College of the Bahamas. So it's not only in the high school and the primary schools, but throughout the secondary and tertiary levels in the Bahamas. And so that is the thing that we want to get across, that we want to preserve the ecological beauty of these islands, because it is that very thing which attracts the tourists to come here in the first place. And many of them that we've interviewed do not like what's going on in Bimini, for example, because they come there, they're shuttled up to the casino, and they're shuttled back onto the fast ferry and go back to Florida. Yeah. Then they come, they want to see the beauty of the islands as they are.
But you pointed to Bimini. Now, when you said, and when we began the program, you pointed to the developers' impact in the Bimini and how it was detrimental to the mangroves and the coastline and the bay areas. But isn't that development was associated with improving the attractiveness of the Bahamas to its main economy, tourism?
No, unequivocally no.
That development was not associated with tourism.
It is like a Western Miami Beach, and we don't need that in the Bahamas. Actually, when they dug up the bay, what they did, there's if you can visualize this, between South Bimini, which is a tiny little island, you can hardly see it on the map, and North Bimini, there's a little strip at the southern part of North Bimini, and you could stand in the middle of it and almost touch the ocean, the deep blue ocean on one side and the bay on the other. What they did was they dug up 160 acres of mangroves, and they piled it on that narrow strip, and then they built walls from one end to the next and widened it enough so that they could put multi-million-dollar second homes there, so that people who come for 3 months to spend in the Bahamas could be in those homes. and you go there most of the year, they are not inhabited. So what they did, they actually devastated the natural replenishment of the beach on the western side. So no, they've made the island ugly and unattractive. But the people who want to gamble, they come over on the fast ferry that Resorts Bimini World operates, and they take them. This is why they want the dock there and the island, because they want to bring them right there, let them go into the casino, gamble for 2 or 3 hours, and then hurry them back to Miami and make 2 trips like that.
But they had to build. But they had to build.
Not adding anything to the beauty of our islands.
But Joe,
they have actually destroyed the natural beauty.
Didn't they have to build a hotel and something that was attractive and accommodative that would be inviting to the people to come to spend their dollars in the Bahamas? And even those who build their nice homes in the Bahamas, wasn't there some economic gains that were achieved by building those homes? I don't know, you tell me, but it seems that there must have been some gains somewhere. I don't think that the governmental structure and the guidelines are so lax that there wasn't one hand feeding the other. You know, that this was done to improve the development and to pour some money into the coffers of the government so that they can improve the social and health of its people. I don't know. I'm here to.
Wendell, actually, you would actually have to see the Bimini area, which they have totally transformed into a mammoth and ugly-looking situation. Of course, they're building a hotel there that's going to house. They're talking about bringing like 500,000 people there a year. The island can't even support itself now with respect to water, sewage, garbage, etc. And you know, there isn't much sane development in that whole project going on. It isn't even being monitored by people who need to see the place and know that it's being done properly. But even the EIA that was published for that development told it very unequivocally of the damage that would be done to the environment, irreparable damage. And it said that if the thing is going to be aborted, it should be aborted immediately in the beginning in order to avoid irreparable damage. Those areas that people used to go to fish and dive all the time, they said in the EIA that no one would be allowed for 10 years to fish or dive in that area within a distance of a mile because of the detriment of getting polluted, poisoned from all of the machinery depositing stuff on. And you telling me that's adding to the beauty? We don't need them. And they brought in foreigners to do the building, and they will bring it. Of course, they will hire some maids and cooks and so forth. But right. it is not for the price that's being paid by our environment. No, they didn't need to. There were alternative plans that they could have made. But this is the MO of Genting, that company. They don't give 2 hoots about what they do to another person's country. They were not allowed to do that in Florida. They bought the old Miami Herald building, and when the government the regulators saw the plans that they had, they said, no way. But right away, they can get permission to do it in Bimini to destroy the environment. So,
well, I see. Also, I'm glad you mentioned that it's also effective the fisheries, and I mean, you know, a lot of tourists come to the Bahamas in order to fish the blue marlin and to fish, and if it has an environmental impact, negatively impacted the environment, it destroys agriculture and the fishery. Joe, you know. In fact, Wendell, not to cut you off, but you know, tuna, marlin, blue marlin tournaments, etc., are held regularly in Bimini, and that same area, because that's where they feed along that bank there before the drop off right. into the tongue of ocean. Right. They said that's the end. They will not come. They don't see the tuna. They don't see the blue marlin in that area anymore. So there goes the ecological benefit
an economic benefit to the country in that regard. We don't need that foolishness that they're doing there. They could have done it in a different way without destroying so much of the environment. Even if they had left it alone in terms of what they had already done, and they could use the regular natural harbor and bring in small tenders, they could achieve the same thing. But they want to bypass the local people in Bimini. They want to take the people directly to the casino, and that's all they want.
I want to tell you that our time is almost closed, and I want to thank you very much for your passion and for the great work that you are doing to save the environment in the Bahamas. And we need to do this globally. And I want to thank our radio audience for listening. Let me finish by saying that there are problems in the world, and there are differences in the world. Some are very great differences in attitudes and discriminations and wars and just hatred in the world. And so I think that in our work we must also take in consideration the advice of Pope Francis when he canonized two saints of the Catholic Church, is that these people have endured tragedy in the 20th century, but they endured, and they endured, and they were not overwhelmed by those tragedies. And we have to keep on pressing on, but not be overwhelmed by the tragedies that confront us. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant afternoon. Goodbye.
Okay. Wendell, thank you so much for having me on, and please send me the online connection so I can listen in the future.
Certainly, I will.
Okay.
I will.
Thank you very kindly, and bless all of you listeners. God bless you. We got a beautiful land here in the Bahamas. Please come and visit, and we are preserving it for future generations. Have a pleasant good afternoon.
Thank you.